Dear viewer, this story kicks off with the disappearance of Marquise Renati's daughter. The Marquise's family and the courtiers kept their hopes up till the very end that the missing girl would be found. But Arabella Renati never made it back home, and the news of her search just brought out a bunch of imposters. As time went on, the despair of the Marquise and his wife just kept growing. One day, a little girl walked into Arabella's room looking for her mom. She asked if her mom would be joining them for dinner. Then, a tearful woman turned to the girl by name and said she was living in luxury, while poor Bella was God knows where. She ordered Anita to get out of her sight and go back to her room, then broke down crying again, asking where her beloved daughter was. The girl wanted to touch her mother and say something, but the woman just screamed louder, telling her to leave. Tears welled up in Anita's eyes as she clutched her hand, which her mother had struck. The upset girl turned around and quickly left the room, while her mother kept repeating Arabella's name. She said that everything Anita now has should belong to Arabella. The Renati family couldn't be left without an heir, so the Marquis's wife had a second child, and that was Anita. But to her parents, it seemed that loving her could offend the vanished firstborn. Years passed, but even the maids, sorting through Miss Anita's dresses, would mention Miss Arabella, for whom this color would have been perfect. There was only one person who noticed Anita. It was young Master Axion, the son of Archduke Ricada, the fiancé of the main heroine. The girl considered him not just her lover, but also her best friend. Since Anita's parents were busy mourning their lost daughter, they didn't care about her, and she happily agreed when the young man proposed she be part of not just his heart, but also his family. There, she finally felt like herself, not a thief who stole everything from her missing sister. Apparently, the desperate prayers of her parents were heard after all, because a girl named Arabella showed up at the palace. She confirmed her identity with a gift she received as a child. A miracle happened, and 12 years later, the real Arabella Renati was finally home. From that day on, life turned into a real hustle for our heroine, with servants picking out wallpapers, carpets, and fabrics for the newly arrived lady. Marchioness Renati demanded something brighter for her daughter, since she had lived in harsh conditions before. Her father urged Arabella to eat a bit more, as she had become so thin, while her mother chattered about allocating more funds to the kitchen to feed the girl nutritious food. During the fitting, the Marchioness promised her daughter that she would buy dresses better than Anita's, and the Marquis said that all the family's jewels now belonged to Arabella. The parents were eager to give their eldest daughter the best of everything, but gradually, it came to the point where they thought about giving her what belonged to Anita. One day, the heroine overheard her parents talking about breaking off Anita's engagement to the Duke's son. Her mom insisted that the groom should have been Arabella's, since the palace had received a marriage proposal for the Marquis's daughter. The woman argued that if their eldest daughter hadn't gone missing back then, she would be the bride now. She begged her husband to break off the engagement so Arabella could take that place. But the man hesitated because it went against the rules. Then his wife started yelling, arguing that it's a parent's duty to secure the best future for their child. She then broke down crying, expressing how angry and disappointed she was that so much didn't go to the eldest daughter, although it rightfully should have. To try and calm his wife down, Mr. Renati said he completely agreed with her and would do everything possible. He added that Arabella deserved it, and Anita should stay and help with family matters, so he wouldn't let her go. Now, dear viewer, let's move to the main heroine's meeting with her beloved. Axion asked why she seemed so pensive and quiet all the time, especially since they rarely see each other. I guess the viewers totally get her mood, but the girl apologized and explained that she's been busy lately. Right after her speech, there was a knock on the door, and the guy asked if Anita was expecting anyone. The girl answered nervously that Axion well knows she didn't invite anyone. The knocking didn't stop. Instead, it got more persistent and louder, so the heroine decided to open the door and see what was up. What she saw stunned her. Standing before her were Arabella and her mom, who was asking to introduce her older sister to the Duke's son. She added that Arabella was the blood of his fiancé, so surely Axion would be interested in chatting with her. At that moment, the main character finally decided that her sister could take anything she wanted from her, but she would never give up her beloved for anything. Axion asked who was there, since Anita was taking so long. The girl promised she'd be back soon. She stormed out into the hallway and slammed the door to the room where her boyfriend was sitting. The Marchioness asked her younger daughter what happened, and she seriously stated that she didn't want to introduce her sister to her fiancé. The woman was shocked and outraged, wondering how such a thing could be said. Then she started yelling, complaining that she wasn't surprised since Anita had always been so mean. Arabella tried to reason with and calm her mom down, but she demanded not to be interfered with, as she wanted to scold the wrongdoer. The Marchioness kept asking when Anita would stop acting like a child, and whether she felt no pity for her younger sister. The main character, with an unflappable expression, questioned what pity had to do with it. She added that it was simply uncultured and rude to crash someone's tea party and burden them with requests. Meanwhile, the Marchioness continued to scream, calling the younger daughter a brute and a selfish person who doesn't want to share anything. Arabella asked her mom in a weak voice to stop yelling at Anita. The next moment, her eyes rolled back and her legs gave way. Her mom managed to catch her as she fainted and started begging her to wake up. But the pleas didn't help, so Anita quickly dashed off to call a doctor. As she was running, she bumped into a red-haired maid who asked where the lady was rushing to. Barely catching her breath, Anita ordered her to urgently call a doctor, and the red-haired girl asked if someone was feeling ill. The dark-haired lady blurted out that Miss Arabella felt unwell near the living room on the first floor. Hearing this, the maid dropped a vase and dashed off to find a doctor, shouting that she'd take care of it right away. Now our heroine could catch her breath, calm down, and think about why Arabella suddenly felt sick. She remembered that when the girl unexpectedly appeared at the castle, a doctor had examined her and concluded that she was not suffering from any diseases or ailments. Coming back to the living room door where the incident happened, Anita found no one there. She chuckled to herself, surprised by her sister's cunning, who had been pretending to be all innocent. The heroine realized that Arabella had pulled this off on purpose, while Axion was totally baffled. Arabella was sitting in front of him, apologizing for barging in so unexpectedly. She assured him that Anita would be there soon, to which he coldly replied that he got it. To herself, the girl thought about how her mom had said that the Duke's son was a nice young man, but in reality, he kind of scared her. Arabella mentally scolded herself for fainting and probably scaring everyone, especially her mother. She thought to herself that it was good she hadn't been unconscious for long and had woken up almost immediately. Coming to, Arabella asked her mother where Anita was, but the woman advised her to worry not about her sister, but about herself. The girl assured her she felt great. Then the Marquise said that now was a perfect opportunity to get to know Axion. Arabella resisted her mom's weird idea, saying it was wrong, but her mom just rushed her. Now Arabella was sitting in front of Axion with a stone-cold expression. She figured he was mad, just like Anita, because she had acted rudely and showed up uninvited. Arabella felt so awkward, she just wanted to vanish. But at the same time, she didn't want to let her parents down. Finally, she decided to say something to Axion, starting with an apology for the inconvenience. The young man said she didn't need to apologize, as she wasn't there by her own choice. Arabella almost died of embarrassment when she realized he had heard everything that happened outside the door. He added that she really shouldn't worry, because as she had mentioned, Anita would be arriving soon. Arabella noticed how his expression brightened up when he mentioned his fiancé's name. Dear viewer, let's find out what's happening with Anita, who's been standing by the door all this time. She was just boiling with anger, and no wonder. Who would stay calm after finding out her sister pretended just to talk to someone else's fiancé? The girl realized that it was probably her mother's plan, since she only wants the best for her darling daughter. All the estate's residents despised and hated Anita for taking everything away from Arabella, and she didn't feel guilty at all. The only person who truly belonged to her was Axion. The girl wondered if that was what it took to be accepted in this palace, but that was not going to happen. As soon as the heroine entered the room, a smile lit up her fiancé's face. Now that's a real example of loyalty. Then Arabella jumped up and blurted out that her sister must be surprised to see her here. She started to apologize, but Anita was too busy thinking about her sister. The heroine believed that Arabella came back home solely to take what belonged to her younger sister. The blonde girl smiled and asked where her sister had been, since she had been waiting for her so eagerly. While Anita was trying to figure out why her sister was smiling so broadly at her, Arabella sneakily glanced at Axion. The blonde girl asked if she could leave. When Anita agreed, Arabella smiled. She sincerely thanked her younger sister and admitted that she had been really scared to be there. Watching Arabella walk away, the heroine wondered why she was so cheerful, having lived in tough conditions for so long, unlike herself. Anita apologized to her fiancé for her relative's rudeness, and he assured her that everything was fine. The girl regretfully noted that so much time had passed, and it was time to wrap up the tea party. The guy stood up and said that it was okay. He understood everything. Then he approached his beloved and said that he wanted her to come to his palace for tea next time. Axion added that if Anita could make time for it, he would send an invitation after lunch. The main character thought that she'd love to escape this palace for a while, where everyone thinks her presence is pointless. The girl figured it'd be nice to be somewhere where she's actually welcomed, so she agreed. Now, let's shift to a family dinner at Marquise Renati's castle. The head of the family asked Bella, as they affectionately call Arabella, if she likes the food. She said everything was delicious, Then Mom suggested she should eat more since she's quite thin. The blonde noticed her sister was only eating a vegetable salad. She got curious, asking if she didn't like the steak or was watching her figure. Arabella added that if that was the case, her sister looked absolutely stunning. Instead of Anita responding, their mom decided to chime in, noting that the younger daughter always ate modestly. The woman told her to worry about herself rather than her sister, and the Marquise backed his wife, adding that the older daughter should put on some weight. Then Bella apologized to her parents and said she would try harder. Her dad protested, saying she had nothing to apologize for, because it was their fault that she had gone hungry for years, while they lived without denying themselves anything. The man sternly asked Anita if she agreed with that. The parents' gazes, full of contempt, turned towards the dark-haired heroine. The Marquis noted that he was well aware of Anita's outrageous behavior towards her sister today. He yelled, asking how she could be so cruel to her own sister, and questioned where her manners were. The man didn't forget to reproach the younger daughter for stuffing her belly and living in luxury while Bella was scavenging for food on the streets. Anita conspicuously finished her meal, and with a calm face, she said she understands that her parents feel responsible for what happened to Bella. The dark-haired girl declared that they shouldn't shift their responsibility onto her, at which point her father flew into a rage. Dad was outraged, asking how his daughter dared to speak to her parents like that. Anita stood up from her spot and declared she was going to her room, since 3 was enough to play family. The Marchioness was furious, calling the younger daughter a brat and demanding she come back to her seat. Anita didn't look back for a second, while her father shouted after her that he wasn't done talking. In such a tense atmosphere, the blonde girl started to get really nervous and accidentally knocked over her plate. The Marchioness asked her husband to tone it down, as his yelling was scaring their older daughter. Arabella started apologizing for the plate that had fallen to the floor, causing a mess in the dining room. The man asked his daughter not to worry, explaining he wasn't yelling at her, but at Anita, who had upset her older sister. Mom told Arabella to ignore the incident, as Anita had always been a bit of a tough cookie since she was a kid. While the blonde girl looked towards the door with sadness and regret, the Marquise curiously asked her husband how he was going to punish Anita. The man's face turned angry, and he ordered the maid to tell Miss Anita to come to the Marquis' office within an hour. And what do you think, dear friends, was Anita's reaction to her father's command? She was totally calm, picking out a book in the library. The girl figured that her dad gave her an hour, but obviously, he was going to coddle his favorite little daughter. Anita realized she had plenty of time to read about the founder of the empire. She really liked this book, although the plot wasn't very interesting, but it talked about Lake Alkent. It was near this lake that the future ruler met the beast that helped him establish the empire. This story soothed her and brought a sense of lightness to her soul. After all, it reminded her of whom she met at that place when she was just a little girl. That's when little Anita first saw that boy. His eyes were so bright that even the lake seemed colorless. To dive deeper into this story, we invite our viewers to travel back 7 years. Back then, Anita Renati was just a 10-year-old kid. The red-haired girl, Rachel Sauvier, a count's daughter, wondered if the Marquise's heir found it boring to spend her time like that. Since they spent days looking at the lake and talking about flowers, the girl asked Anita what they were discussing. At that moment, Anita wondered if Rachel noticed she wasn't really joining in the conversation. The little one said that the plant the friends were curious about was called Lavena. She added that this flower was of unearthly beauty and smelled really nice too. Rachel thanked Anita for the tip. The heroine smiled fakely, thinking to herself when this stupid tea party would end. The park near Lake Alkent was popular among nobles, especially with aristocratic girls who held their tea parties there. Our main heroine was invited to one of these, though she had another reason for being there. The thing is, a voice had persuaded her to go to the tea party because Rachel Sauvier couldn't take her eyes off the Marquis' daughter and clearly wanted to befriend her. But Anita knew all too well that the red-haired girl didn't really want to get close to her, but to her family. By the way, this little spark of light was a low-level spirit, and only Anita could see it. She didn't tell anyone, but when she got close to the lake, she could clearly hear the spirit's voice. That's exactly why she visited here so often. But if her parents knew about her ability, they'd make her look for her sister. Her stream of thoughts was interrupted by the spirit's voice, announcing that someone was drowning in the lake. The main heroine got seriously scared and mentally asked if there was someone older who could help. The voice said there was no one suitable around, and there was no time to waste since the poor guy was already unconscious. The girl thought about convincing her friends to take a walk to the lake. She immediately dismissed the idea, realizing that by the time they got to the shore, the person desperately needing help would have already drowned. She figured there was no time to explain. She had to act on her own, so she told the others she was just going for a walk by the lake. As she took off her shoes, the girl mentally begged the voice to somehow nudge her friends towards the shore so they would find her shoes. The spirit realized what the little one was planning and screamed with all his might to stop her, but Anita didn't listen, and without a second thought, jumped into the water. In the depths, she saw a girl sinking to the bottom. The girl tried to grab her and pull, but realized the adult's body was just too heavy. Regrettably, the heroine concluded that no one else came to help after all. She knew if things kept going this way, they'd both be goners, when suddenly, the little girl saw a water spout appear out of nowhere and save them. For a long time, Anita couldn't figure out what that phenomenon was, or where it came from, but she had to accept the situation, since this lake was often mentioned in legends and myths since the empire was founded. Suddenly, the shore filled with noisy people, and a man approached the girl, introducing himself as Archduke Ricada. He said there weren't enough words to express his gratitude, and then a boy came up to the little girl. He introduced himself and thanked her for saving his mother. That's how their first meeting happened. And now the girl smiled as she remembered that moment, since back then she hadn't given her name. However, that didn't stop the boy from sending Anita a letter a week later, and that's where their romantic story began. Now let's return to the present. Anita decided it was time to go back, but as she came downstairs, she accidentally overheard her parents talking. They were discussing how the doctor couldn't figure out why Arabella fainted today, and that they needed to hurry up and break off Anita's engagement. The Marchioness mentioned that if rumors spread across the empire that the eldest Renati daughter was ill, they wouldn't be able to pull off the wedding. Her husband wondered if the prince would take to the blonde girl, to which his wife sarcastically laughed. She reminded him that the prince was known for his excessive cruelty and his penchant for chasing every skirt. The woman questioned where the guarantee was, that they wouldn't end up like the imperial family. She concluded that the prince wasn't worthy of Bella, as even after marriage she deserved to receive the love she had been deprived of for so long. Probably neither the main character nor the viewers doubted that the Marchioness would say such a thing about her beloved daughter. The Marquis told his wife that he had devised a plan for Anita to get close to the Empress. The woman shouted that it was brilliant, as breaking off the engagement would be a piece of cake if Anita became a contender for the prince's heart. In a split second, everything she did for her family lost its value to her. She wondered if her parents really thought she owed the family just because she shared their last name. Could her mom and dad really believe they could control her life, dictate her fate, and expect her to stay loyal? Their confidence in her loyalty made the girl smile, considering they never really saw her as a true Renati. Pointing out her differences, Anita had often witnessed rumors and gossip about her birth. For instance, she recently overheard a conversation among the maids, where one insisted something was off with the younger miss. Her argument was that Miss Arabella looked just like her parents, while Miss Anita stood out like a sore thumb. Hearing that bold gossip call her a commoner, the protagonist got seriously mad and stepped out of hiding. Anita told the maid she had crossed the line and asked how she dared to voice such pathetic speculations. She ordered her to pack her things and get out of the palace. Even though the chatty girl was asking for forgiveness, Anita stood her ground. Her Highness walked and thought that all these rumors about their origin couldn't go on like this. The main character realized that if she didn't do something, her sister would take not just her place in engagement, but also her beloved. The girl decided that she wouldn't allow Arabella to do this and wouldn't let her parents control her. As Anita was pondering this in her room, her personal maid, Hari, popped in. The pink-haired girl informed her that a knight, Rick Elmont from the Knightly Order, had arrived. Hari was the only one in the palace who was genuinely kind to Miss Anita, though it might have been because of the expensive gifts. Her Highness periodically made such gifts to her maid as a thank you for her service. Hari mentally patted herself on the back for sticking with Miss Anita. After all, if she had followed the majority and served Miss Arabella, she wouldn't have received such treatment. A lot of viewers really like the main character, but why bribe your servants and then doubt their loyalty and sincerity? While changing the flowers in the vase, Hari realized that Miss Arabella is sharp and insightful because she lived among commoners for a long time. And she compared Miss Anita to a beautiful flower in a greenhouse, one that never experienced the cruelty of the world. Suddenly, the pink-haired girl got really upset, remembering that Miss Anita didn't even pat her on the head today. Now, let's shift to the main character's quarters, where she was happily greeting a young man who served as a knight. He greeted Her Highness just as joyfully and asked how they were doing. Anita replied that everything was fine, and noted how nice it was that the knight decided to deliver the letter in person, though he could have sent it through a servant. The girl mentioned that it was just an invitation, and it wasn't worth the trouble. He argued that it was worth it because he wanted to see the lady and chat with her a bit. The girl smiled and asked the guy if he had finished his business in the north, and he said yes. Thankfully, the problems were minor. He mentioned that the only thing he couldn't get used to in the north was the cold. The weather up north was notorious across the empire. Even in summer, there were severe frosts. Nothing grew on the barren soils, but the precious stones mined from the depths of this land caused quite a stir. The imperial family managed the mining, but when certain troubles arose, the Archduke's knights were sent to the north. One day, Anita asked her fiancé why his family always obeyed the emperor's every command without question. She added that since Axion's family wasn't just any noble house, they could easily refuse the emperor. The young man explained that his family was searching for something in the north, and by fulfilling all the emperor's requests, they could avoid suspicion. Suddenly, the girl became curious whether the Archduke's family had found what they had been searching for so long and meticulously in the north. Just then, an angry voice echoed in the hallway, demanding to know why no one had reported that a subordinate of Archduke Ricada was here. A woman's voice demanded the door be opened immediately, so they had to inform Lady Anita that the Marchioness was demanding a meeting. The main character told her to let her in, and Mother entered the room. She asked with dissatisfaction why her daughter hadn't informed her about a guest from the Archduchy arriving at the estate. The Marquise asked if she was intruding. Sir Rick replied not at all, and welcomed the woman who appeared. Anita thought to herself what an actress her mom is. She came here on purpose as soon as she heard everything. The Marquise feigned surprise when the young man introduced himself as the deputy commander of the Rakid Knight Squadron. He added that he came to deliver an invitation to a tea party. The woman said it was unnecessary for someone of such high rank to trouble himself, but Sir Rick objected. He explained that it would be an honor for anyone to undertake this task, since it involved Miss Anita. The Marquise noted she didn't realize her daughter was so close with the Rakid Knight Order. The guy mentioned it wasn't just with the knights. He clarified that Miss is close with all the other residents of the estate too, and it's no surprise since she saved a member of the Reckitt family. The woman laughed and asked if she got it right that this was about a case from 8 years ago. She pointed out that it was the doctor who played a key role in the rescue, not Anita, which pissed off the knight. Then she glanced at the invitation on the table and mentioned how interesting it was to see what the Archduke's son had written. The girl snatched the envelope from her mother's hands, saying she hadn't read it herself yet, and that it was wrong to read someone else's letters. Upon opening the invitation, the heroine smelled the scent of roses, and then saw that the suitor had placed rose petals inside the envelope. She was deeply touched by the invitation from Axion for a tea party he was hosting in his estate's garden. The girl asked the knight to tell his lord that she joyfully accepts the invitation. The Marchioness thought it necessary to send Arabella to the tea party, because once the Archduke's son sees her, he'll realize she's better than Anita. She interrupted the conversation and said she was incredibly worried about her older daughter. The woman asked Sir Rick if he was aware that Arabella had lived under poor conditions for a long time, while Anita grew up in luxury. The main character was sick of her mother's fake whining, so she decided to play along. The dark-haired girl suggested taking Arabella with her, but doubted her sister would be pleased. The Marchioness exclaimed that her daughter would be happy. The girl asked if Sir Rick minded, and he said he was fine with whatever Miss Anita wished. The knight said he had to take his leave, as other matters awaited him. Anita and the Marchioness expressed their pleasure at the meeting and wished him a safe journey. As soon as the door slammed shut, the woman demanded a private talk. She was outraged about what her daughter was allowing herself to do, questioning why she had dismissed the servant, who, by the way, was her subordinate. The dark-haired girl explained that the servant had been disrespectful towards the owners of the house. The girl noted she did it for her mother, as she dislikes such mean people. Then the woman cooled down, said she would forgive her for now, especially since there were more important matters at hand. She explained that in 10 days, Arabella has an audience with the Empress, and Anita needs to accompany her. The Marquise explained that her eldest daughter had never been to such events before, and would find it difficult and scary to go alone. But the main character was no fool, and quickly realized that Arabella wanted to present her to the Empress as a potential bride for the prince. The girl understood that if the Empress got involved, her engagement to Axion would automatically be destroyed. In a subdued voice, Anita asked if it wouldn't be better to first ask the Empress, but her mother replied that she had already given her consent. Then the woman declared that her daughter must understand that Belle was originally meant to be Axion's bride. She advised her daughter to calm down and accept the situation. The story takes us to the Archduchy of Rakid, where Axion was talking with his mother. She asked how Anita was doing, whether there had been any changes at home, but the guy said everything was the same as before. Then the woman recalled how she had spoken with young Anita many years ago. The girl had told her how she eagerly awaited coming of age so she could finally leave her family estate. The Archduchess offered her to stay at her estate until she turned 18. Anita thanked her for the offer and politely declined. The girl explained that it would be unfair and irresponsible towards her family. Axion noted that his mother looked completely worn out and asked if she was that worried. The woman confessed that she deeply regretted not being able to save Anita and take her in when she had the chance. The main character had dinner in her own rooms. The girl ate in her room because her parents had said earlier that the younger daughter was being rude, so she should eat alone. Actually, this contradicts their recent statement that for Bella's sake, the whole family should dine together. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. It turned out to be Philip, the Renati family's butler, who informed the young lady that the Marquis wanted to see her. She was already heading to her father's office, but the butler didn't move. The girl figured he wanted to say something else, and after hesitating, Philip confessed that the master wants to hand over the business to his daughter. He blurted out that he thinks it's too much since Miss Anita is still so young. She advised him not to go on, as he was speaking about people he should be serving. She asked the butler to imagine what would happen if his words reached her father. As she was leaving, the lady advised Philip to be careful, because such talk could get him kicked out without a penny to his name. The man realized she was right. It was too early for him to leave. He needed to stay and serve his true mistress. So far, the author hasn't justified such deep devotion to Miss Anita. Hopefully, it'll all make sense to the readers in the next chapters. Meanwhile, the Marquis dumped a huge stack of papers in front of his daughter and asked her to sort them out. He noted that she's been home all day lately, so she should be able to handle it in 4 days. Anita was surprised to herself, wondering why her dad was so mad about her younger sister's rude behavior, especially since he had forbidden Bella to leave the house or see her friends after she came back. Anita remembered that she started helping her parents with paperwork when she was just 12. Even back then, she fully realized that she was not needed by her family, so she dreamt of cutting all ties with them once she was of age. At that time, the main character decided that until then, she would work as hard as possible for the good of her family. But even to this day, her father makes her help him with the documents. As the girl wondered if she would have to do this all her life, her father was asking why she was so quiet. He said it was easy, that anyone could handle it. And at those words, a smile appeared on Anita's face. She asked, "If it's such easy work, why doesn't Marquis just do it himself?" The man yelled that he was teaching his daughter to handle any task on her own, because no one would help her when she becomes the owner of Ricada. Anita replied that since her mom, who owns the house, never touched the documents, the Ricade family probably isn't much different. The man got angry, questioning how his daughter dares to talk back, especially since she's not a little girl anymore and should be responsible for family matters. The main character pointed out that unlike the Marquis, Axion isn't planning to dump his duties on her. She advised him, as the head of the family, to handle the paperwork himself and headed for the exit. The man yelled after Anita that her sister's return home revealed her true rotten nature. The girl didn't stop. Then her father shouted that she was doing the right thing. She should go to her room and think it over. The girl just smiled. The door slammed shut, and the Marquis continued to fume, wondering how much longer he had to put up with this cheeky girl. Meanwhile, the carriage with Anita and Arabella was on its way to the Duchy of Ricade. The main character thought to herself, she just knew her mom would find an excuse to send her favorite daughter off to Anita's fiancé. Suddenly, Bella called out to her sister, but couldn't manage to say anything coherent. The dark-haired girl was at her limit, telling her sister to speak up if she had something to say. Belle found it hard to muster the courage and form a coherent sentence. Anita wondered how long she could keep mumbling. Finally, the blonde admitted she didn't want the same things as their mom, but instead wished happiness for Axion and his bride. She added that she couldn't treat her own sister badly. The main character was shocked by Bella's frank confession and asked if she had ever been in a happy relationship. The blonde shared that the commoner's family who took her in is now happy, as the Marquis sent them a mountain of gold. Anita pointed out that they might be lucky now, but Arabella's real parents are nothing like that. The blonde noted they had strayed from the original topic and reminded her that she had no intention of stealing the groom. The main character got curious and asked if Arabella had mentioned her wish to her mother, or at least to the servants. She received a timid no in response. Anita concluded with dissatisfaction that her sister didn't even try to talk to those who couldn't care less about her opinion. She added that nothing would change just because Arabella confessed to her. At that moment, the carriage stopped. The coachman announced their arrival, and Anita indifferently proceeded to the garden. Bella lingered a bit to think about their conversation. Once in the garden of the Ricade Archduchy, Arabella's eyes widened in awe of what she saw. Axion said that if he had known the weather would be this nice, he would have set up the tea closer to Lake Alquente. The blonde girl noted that she really liked it here too, especially the white flowers. She asked if she could smell them. Axion agreed without hesitation, but Anita looked wary. She realized her sister was about to sniff a flower called lovin' and watched the whole thing suspiciously. Bella felt weird. but managed to muster the strength to compliment the flower's pleasant scent. Axion said he was really glad the guest appreciated his garden. Meanwhile, Anita noticed her sister turning pale. She wanted to check if Bella was okay, but couldn't even finish her sentence. The next second, the blonde girl fainted and didn't respond to any shouts. Guys, no need to worry about Arabella. She's alive and well. Plus, she woke up in a soft bed with the Duke's son sitting beside her. Seeing Mr. Axion, Bella panicked, bombarding him with questions about where she was and why she was there. He explained that Bella had fainted during a walk in the garden, and she angrily asked where Anita was. He told her that Anita was talking to the doctor about her sister's condition and would be back soon. After that line, an awkward silence hung between the young people. They both kept quiet, and Axion even turned towards the door, waiting for his beloved to appear. The blonde girl remembered how before this trip, her mom had said that Arabella would definitely appeal to the Duke's son. In her mind, she noted that her mom was deeply mistaken, as it was clear to see how much the guy was in love with Anita. Only next to his fiancé do his eyes sparkle. His gaze shines when he looks at her. Bella concluded that her younger sister was a very kind and good person, just appearing cold and indifferent. The girl didn't want to follow her mom's plan and act mean towards her sister. Bella decided to break the silence and call out to Axion. The girl confessed that she really liked Anita as a person, so she wanted her sister to be happy. Arabella swore that she wanted this with all her heart. The guy replied that he agrees and sincerely wishes his beloved more happiness than anyone else in this world. The girl lit up with a smile, suddenly realizing that Mr. Axion was the one who could make Anita truly happy. Meanwhile, the dark-haired girl was talking to her sister's doctor. He dared to suggest that Miss Renati is extremely sensitive to divine power. Anita didn't understand what divine power he was referring to, so the man clarified that it's usually detected early in childhood. He added that due to certain life circumstances, the patient never had the chance to discover this. Anita asked the doctor if he was sure about his conclusions. He explained that the doctors here have a deep understanding of magic, as the Archduke's family inherited it from mystical beings. The main character thought that if it weren't for the trip to the Archduchy and this doctor, they would have never known about it. Even her parents aren't aware of this disease. The girl smirked, imagining the shock on her parents' faces when they'd hear the news about their darling daughter. Before leaving, she asked if the patient could travel, and the doctor said it wouldn't harm her if she rested now. Thanks to this scene, viewers realized that the main character was not as simple as she seemed at the start of the manhwa. Anita headed back to the room where her sister was to tell her they could go home. But as she approached the slightly open door, she saw Axion and Arabella chatting sweetly. At that moment, she regretfully noted to herself that the young couple seemed perfect for each other. Immediately, it struck her that even without Arabella's appearance, the engagement was doomed to end. The thing is, as a little girl, Anita had promised herself that she'd leave home and cut all ties with her family once she was of age. For this reason, her engagement to Axion was never meant to evolve into something more. But her parents were meddling and tried to take away the only person who was on Anita's side. Because of this, the girl was really mad and didn't want to give in to them. In her mind, she turned to her beloved and asked if he would stay as a friend if the engagement fell through. Of course, she wanted to believe that their relationship would stay the same. But still, the main character couldn't help but think what would be left for her if her fiancé turned his back on her. Let's fast forward a few hours when Anita and Arabella got back home. The Marchioness immediately put her beloved daughter to rest, while the Marquis grilled Anita about where she had been during her sister's incident. The heroine asked what she was supposed to do, pointing out she wasn't a doctor and couldn't have prevented the fainting. Hearing this, the mother was shocked by such rude behavior, and the father was outraged at how cruel Anita could be to her sister. He reminded her that Bella was an unfortunate child, and unlike her younger sister, grew up in terrible conditions. Funny how the life of commoners is called terrible conditions, as if Bella was roaming the streets looking for shelter and food. She had a roof over her head and food, not filling maybe, but there was definitely some soup. But let's stop speculating and move on to Anita's conversation with her parents. Her dad said he suspected that his youngest daughter was greedy and envious, but he didn't expect this. She said she probably got it from her dad, since he was the one who recently kicked out the family that raised Bella from the palace. The girl clarified that he didn't want to pay them a dime, although her sister thinks that their dad had properly thanked those who took her in. She said she shouldn't be blamed for this incident, because she understands that her mom intentionally sent Bella to the Archduchy. The Marquis couldn't resist his wife's pleas, and he slapped his daughter across the face. Her mother yelled at her father that he shouldn't have touched her before the trip to the Imperial Palace. He should have beaten her later. Anita concluded that she didn't expect anything different. However, after that, she didn't feel like sharing anything about the document she read while carrying out a task from her dad. Now let's shift to the main heroine's quarters, where her face was being examined by the maid Hari. The pink-haired girl noted that swelling would soon appear, and a bruise might form at the spot tomorrow. She came up with the idea to swipe a piece of ice from the kitchen and apply it to the lady's face. But the main character objected, saying not to worry, as all the medicines would be brought to her tomorrow anyway. Then Hari expressed her deep concern for Miss Arabella, wanting to know why she fainted today. After hearing this, Anita remembered asking Axion if he had done anything to the flower. The young man admitted he wanted to find something out, so he infused it with a drop of divine power. But he didn't expect this to happen. Then Axion asked his beloved if she was now disappointed in him, while the viewers are left guessing what Anita's response was. Let's fast forward a couple of hours where our heroine lay in her bed. She wondered how Axion would react, whether he'd say something or just smirk, if she told him she was disappointed. Once, the maids searched the entire Ricada estate for the little mistress, but to no avail. They had no idea Anita was hiding amidst the flowers and bushes. The girl wondered what was wrong with her, since everyone here was friendly and welcoming. Anita knew this place was definitely better than home, but it seemed like she just didn't deserve to be treated well. Her parents had sent her here to mend relations between the Ricada and Renati houses. So, the little one understood that she couldn't behave this way. But suddenly, her heart pinched, and her lungs tightened so much she couldn't breathe. Through the girl's sobs, a boy's voice could be heard asking if Anita was really here. The boy confessed he had been searching for her for a long time. She replied it was impossible, as he secretly hated her. The heroine reminded him that after the day she saved the Archduchess, they never spoke or even crossed paths. She added that she was used to hatred and indifference, so she didn't react because almost everyone disliked her. Axion smiled and said he couldn't feel hatred towards the girl. He suggested they go together. That's when the girl first felt the gentle touch of another body. She was so caught up in her emotions that she didn't notice the boy's eyes were filled with despair. A couple of days later, there was a real commotion outside the Archduke's son's chambers because Axion had fallen ill. Ella, a servant of the Ricada house, rushed into the young master's room and told the Archduchess she would stay by the boy. She asked her lady to go and rest, but the Archduchess assured her that everything was under control. Besides, this event happened every summer, so it was time to get used to it. Nothing could be done. Then the Archduchess asked if Anita had fallen asleep, and the servant replied that she had. Ella added that while preparing for bed and changing the young lady, they discovered wounds, abrasions, and bruises. They looked like they've been through a lot, so the maid didn't know what to do. The lady ordered her to treat the wounds with holy water to prevent scarring, and to visit the sanctuary in the morning. Ella noted that she used to get mad at the girl when she refused help, but now the reason was clear. It's just unclear how it all started. Milady guessed it had something to do with the relic the Renati family recently took from the Imperial Vault. The command lamp determines family ties and blood relations, but nobody thought to check its authenticity. Probably, the wounds and bruises appeared on Anita's body when the girl who called herself Arabella showed up at the Renatis. Suddenly, another servant entered the room and announced that the Duchess was summoned to the Archduke's office. In the hallway, she saw Anita and asked her what she was doing there. The girl replied that she followed the doctor who ran this way. She apologized if her presence was a disturbance, to which the Archduchess replied that it was fine since the little one was worried about a friend. The woman clarified that nothing terrible happened to Axion. He just sometimes has these ailments. She asked the little girl to keep it a secret, since the heir of the Archduke has many enemies who'd want to harm him. The girl promised to keep her lips sealed. The Archduchess decided to casually ask if she really had bruises and wounds on her body. Anita replied that they were small, so she didn't think it necessary to mention them. From her answer, the lady realized that the girl had been hiding it even from her close ones, and she asked her to speak up if something hurts. She allowed her to come to their estate often and even to stay. But Anita declined again, saying it wasn't right. She explained that children of landowners start working at 10 years old, and being that age, she wanted to help her father. Surprised, the Archduchess asked if her father had told her that, and Anita confidently nodded. She declared that the Marquis was absolutely right. Then the woman noted that now everything made sense to her. Milady asked the girl if she could sit with Axion for a bit while she stepped out for some errands. Upon getting the green light, the Archduchess gently stroked the little one's head and commented on how sweet she was. The word sweet really took the girl by surprise, since no one had ever called her that before. By Axion's bedside, Anita got the urge to touch the boy's hand, but it was warmer in the garden than it was now. The Archduchess's voice, telling her how sweet she was, still echoed in the girl's head. Anita caught herself feeling more calm and at peace here than at her own home. All this time, Axion was groaning, clearly tormented by nightmares. That made the girl think that she'd rather have those dreams herself, since she was used to nightmares. Anita was sure she could handle them quicker and easier than Axion could. Waking up, Axion found Anita asleep next to his bed. He got up, carefully moved the girl to his spot, and noticed she was softly whimpering and whining. The boy figured she was having nightmares, so he decided to take them on himself and placed his hand on her head. He truly wanted Anita to only have sweet dreams. A second later, the heroine was sleeping peacefully and quietly, and Axion silently wondered if she remembered the day they met. Now, he took her hand and thought to himself that he often reminisces about that day. The boy admitted he was really glad she made it out of that lake alive. And now, dear viewer, let's dive into the story and find out that the first emperor founded 2 archduchies. These lands were endowed with magic by a mystical creature, and one of them was ruled by the emperor's brother. The second land was designated for the Rocket lineage, and the archduchy story began with the son of the first monarch. But in reality, things weren't as smooth and perfect as the legends and myths described. It was believed that the mystical creature had good relations with the imperial family, but it turned out it had cursed them. Lake Alkent became a total nightmare. Nobody could get out of that body of water alive. The emperor placed guards there who saved many lives, and at the same time, saved the monarch's reputation from disaster. Yet, there were still some crafty folks who slipped past the guards and dived into the lake, but they never surfaced again. But Anita managed to escape and met Axion. She couldn't imagine how lucky she was to have made it out alive from the cursed lake waters, a truth only known to the imperial family. The boy realized that without divine power, escaping the lake was impossible, so he equated her appearance on the shore to a miracle. He suspected that the mystical creature had helped the girl, but overall, it didn't matter, because what was important was that she had saved his mother. That's why Axion treated Anita as a savior. But one day, he caught himself unable to take his eyes off her. Back in the days this story unfolds, all that was left of divine power was the gift of healing. Axion was the only one born with such an ability. His Majesty waited for the moment the boy would show weakness, and the sanctuary kept an eye on him all the time. What also bothered the boy was that he felt uncomfortable in his own estate, even though the servants were very kind. He felt like some sort of indescribable substance, hard to place into any specific category. Even in social settings, he felt out of place, and Anita felt the same way. She was lonely too. When Axion looked at her, something inside him tightened. He believed that if they both had divine power, they would understand each other better. On the day when the maid's calls echoed throughout the estate, the boy feared he had lost Anita forever. But having found her, he finally understood everything. Back in the day, the boy wanted the girl to be like him, but now he doesn't care whether she has abilities or not. Deep down, he was even glad she didn't have that gift. Otherwise, she'd have to go through what he did. Axion lay down next to her and mentally promised never to do anything that would upset Anita, especially since he still hadn't asked her why she eats so little. Why doesn't any servant accompany the little miss when she goes somewhere? But what really worried the boy was whether Anita was happy. Now let's get back to the present, where Hari was carefully applying ointment to Miss Anita's swollen cheek. She noted that the medicine really arrived quickly, probably because the Marquise feels guilty about what happened. The maid added that His Excellency is so concerned about his daughter that he ordered her not to go anywhere for now. The heroine realized that her father simply doesn't want anyone to see her with a bruise. While Hari happily babbled that it would heal quickly, Hari added that they recently brought some holy water for the mistress, and she was rummaging through a dresser at that moment. Miss Anita pulled out a coin and handed it to the maid, but she started to refuse it. Then our heroine realized it wasn't enough, and the next second, she poured a whole handful of coins into Hari's palm. The pink-haired girl was thrilled and said she would bring the mistress the tastiest breakfast now. Left alone, the heroine felt a strange sensation, as if she couldn't remember an important dream. She felt incredibly melancholic. By the way, did any of the viewers notice how quickly the main heroine's hair grew? Meanwhile, Axion was also standing by the window, reminiscing about a sunny day when he and Anita had a picnic. Back then, the kids agreed to keep just one secret and share everything else. However, it turned out that the boy knew that one secret. The thing is, Anita didn't have divine power, but she could talk to the spirit. The young man wondered if this meant that Arabella also had such an ability. Suddenly, there was a knock and Axion let them in. 2 guys entered the room. One of them was Sir Rick the Knight. The young lord asked if they had managed to find out anything. The young man in the gray suit replied that he had discovered something and would start his report with Arabella Renati. At that moment, probably a lot of viewers started worrying about Arabella. After all, she hadn't done anything wrong, just wishing her sister happiness. The guy said he learned from the doctor that the elder Miss Renati was sensitive to divine power, although that wasn't actually true. Axion noted that a girl with such a gift could be useful to the imperial family, especially if it comes to marrying the prince. He stated that this must not be interfered with and asked who was conducting the sacred ritual this year. The guy in the suit answered that it was the Count of Room's second daughter, then added that the Renati family wouldn't just sit back and do nothing. He explained that the Marquise wants to assert her position at this event and will try to make the best impression possible. The ceremony is held once every 3 years. It's to identify the bearer of divine power among the aristocrats. The young man added that this time, the sacred ceremony is very important for Renati, and Sir Rick confirmed that it's indeed the case. He mentioned that they had declined to participate many times before, citing that the younger sister must wait until the older one has undergone the ceremony. The guy in the suit summed up that now there are no obstacles, and Axion asked, "What are the chances she'll faint?" The young man said that shouldn't happen if no one gets hurt, and there's no need to use power for healing. But if Arabella loses consciousness, it could lead to a marriage contract being initiated. The Renati family will be beside themselves, thinking they might face the same fate. Axion noted to himself that Anita isn't someone who trusts just anyone. He remembered she never once called Arabella her sister, so they must not be very close. The young master wondered if Anita even cared about her sister at all. The guy in the gray suit was puzzled by the master's long silence and asked what he was thinking about. Finally, Axion broke his silence and declared that he wanted to take part in this sacred ritual too. The main heroine was lying down, mentally frustrated that despite being completely isolated from the outside world, her father still managed to overload her with work. The only thing lifting her spirits was that the Marquis hadn't yet noticed the missing document about tax evasion. Could he really think the document just got mixed up with a bunch of other papers? Anita noticed something was off a year ago, since the amount of funds regularly allocated for the sanctuary didn't match up. Meanwhile, large sums of money were disappearing into thin air. With these thoughts, the girl headed off to meet with the Marquis. But he made it clear to his daughter, in his usual way, that it's none of her business. That's when the heroine realized it wasn't just a mistake. Later, she found out there was double bookkeeping involved. The Marquis personally managed the affairs, and for a while, Anita didn't even see the paperwork. But eventually, the responsibility shifted back to the girl. It turned out that Marquis Renati's large donations to the sanctuary were linked to Arianda's lamp. This relic could locate anyone, which is how her parents found Arabella. The girl knew a tax audit was coming in 4 months, and the imperial family wouldn't ignore it. That's when the Marquis's financial schemes would be exposed. However, the heroine didn't want to be involved in deciding on this matter at all. The most important thing for the girl was that you can't pay off a tax evasion fine by giving up parts of your estate. For the residents of the lands under the Marquise, safety comes at the cost of having their personal property seized to cover fines. Moreover, due to their dire financial situation, in a few years, her parents would have to let go of their servants. No viewer would be thrilled to be in the main character's shoes, considering her crazy parents might give up something dear to her to settle the fine. A couple of days later, it was time to meet the Empress, and when Bella got ready, she decided to show herself to her parents. Naturally, they showered her with compliments on her look. At that moment, the Marquis reminded his daughter that during this visit, it was crucial to remember to follow proper manners and etiquette. As Bella was descending the stairs, she noticed Anita ready to leave and exclaimed with joy. She started praising her sister's appearance. Naturally, the Marquise didn't like this, while Anita wondered if their parents had specifically ordered the servants to dress her up that way. Obviously, they wanted the younger daughter to stand out next to her sister, so the Marquise suggested she add more blush and brighten up her complexion. But Bella argued that what she had on was enough, pointing out that Anita's face was just naturally clean and pale. Right then, Hari rushed over to the dark-haired lady, offering to touch up her makeup, but she declared she was all set. As they were leaving, Anita shot a reproachful look at her mom, hurrying Bella towards the door. Suddenly, their dad appeared and asked the daughters to stop, saying he urgently needed to talk to Anita. The main character sarcastically told herself, wondering if something had happened. The dark-haired girl remarked that she had nothing to discuss with the Marquise, unless he wanted to ask about her cheek. The father yelled in frustration, accusing Anita of going back to her old ways. Arabella asked in surprise, why was Dad yelling at her sister so fiercely? Their mother responded that there was no need to worry, as it didn't concern her. The Marquise insisted they talk somewhere else, because Bella was getting scared, and Anita repeated that there was nothing to discuss with their father, especially not in private. The servants were gossiping about why Miss Anita was acting that way. One of them guessed that the mistress wanted to upset her sister. Another explained that she just thought her dress wasn't pretty enough. Just then, Miss Arabella approached the maids. She said that it wasn't her sister's fault. It was their father who came and started shouting. The maids praised Miss Bella for being so kind, and they mentioned that Miss Anita could do with being a bit more like her sister. Bella was sure they were mistaken. She knew her sister was a good person, but it puzzled her that everyone around, the sweet parents and kind servants, said she was bad. The blonde girl pondered, would a bad person rush to find a doctor when someone faints? She also remembered how the butler had told her about her sister, saving the Archduchess at age 8 and pulling her out of the lake. The Marquise asked Arabella to wait in the carriage because she needed to talk to Anita with their father. But Bella strongly protested and grabbed her sister by the hand. She made it clear that if her parents wanted to talk to her sister, they should do it in her presence. Can you imagine how shocked her parents were by their beloved daughter? Even Anita was surprised by her sister's behavior. But then she forced herself to snap out of it and remember that Arabella is the daughter of these two selfish people. The Marquis and his wife started making excuses, saying they didn't mean any harm. They just wanted Bella's feet to hurt. Their mother insisted that her favorite daughter was still weak, so she should let go of Anita's hand and rest in the carriage. Arabella said they might be late to Her Majesty, so they needed to hit the road right now. After this, Arabella will start to grow on many viewers, finally becoming confident, and hopefully it stays that way. The carriage carrying the Marquise and her two daughters arrived at the Imperial Castle. When it was Anita's turn to get off, she noticed that one of the guards was acting strangely. His face practically screamed that he was disgusted to be here, shaking hands with the young mistress. He impatiently asked if the lady was finally going to get out of the carriage. Suddenly, the heroine realized she had seen this guard somewhere before, then remembered he was the one who brought Arabella. But he wasn't an escort before. Did they promote him or something? Anita was so annoyed by the disgruntled sighs that she decided to accidentally stumble. A shout came from the young man. He complained that if Miss can't get down by herself, she should at least hold his hand. The young mistress asked if he knew anything about chivalry. The guy snapped back, asking why that mattered. The heroine replied that apparently not, but she never imagined the Renati family had a wayward knight who didn't know the basic rules. He retorted that the same could be said about Miss Anita. She asked for clarification, and the guard asked if she was the one mocking and ridiculing her sister. Suddenly, the Marquise screamed, outraged at how he could say such a thing. Anita gave her mother a suspicious look and realized she had deliberately spread rumors about her daughter, and now was trying to act innocent. The heroine decided to play along with her mother for now, to dig deeper into this later. She smiled and thanked her for the support she had given. Anita said she didn't understand why the knight, who was seeing the young lady for the first time, felt such hatred towards her. She guessed that the maids she had fired must have spread those rumors about her. The Marquise simply smiled satisfactorily, confirming it was all true. Anita sadly noted that she no longer wanted to see that knight. Madame Renati chirped happily that once her father found out, he would either kick him out of the squad or even banish him. Anita pointed out that bringing up the link was too much and suggested they head to the Empress's reception. The head maid knocked on the doors and announced that the Marchioness and her daughters had arrived. From the gold-inlaid room, a commanding female voice allowed them to enter. During the bow and greeting, Arabella stumbled and stuttered. That's when Anita realized her sister was really nervous. The Empress looked at them with a cold gaze and an emotionless expression. Although it was known her life turned tragic after losing her family, she remained unflappable. Many joked she was just afraid of getting wrinkles, but Her Majesty showed no reaction. Suddenly, the Empress turned to Arabella, expressed her delight in finally seeing her, and ordered everyone but her to leave the room. The Marchioness quickly intervened, explaining that her eldest daughter was at such a meeting for the first time, didn't know how to act, and was very scared. Her Majesty sternly stated that she was well aware Arabella Renati was 19, which meant her mom didn't need to tag along. The Marquise apologized. The Empress, even more insistently and loudly, repeated that Anita Renati and her mother needed to leave. While waiting, Marquise Renati was so nervous, she was shaking like a leaf. Suddenly, Anita stood up sharply. Her mother asked how she could think of leaving at such a tense moment, and what if the Empress was looking for her? Anita replied that Her Majesty was currently busy with Arabella, and unlikely to need anyone else. The woman insisted her daughter stay, but the girl simply said she didn't want to. She added that a servant would let her know if Her Majesty was looking for her. The Marquise argued that it would be better if the girl stayed here and could enter the hall on call immediately. The main character stopped abruptly and asked sarcastically, "What for?" Without waiting for an answer, she guessed, "Is it to offer herself as a bride candidate for the prince?" Anita told her shocked mom that she might go and ask if Her Highness had any other plans for her. She said if that wasn't the case, she didn't understand mom's reaction. Stepping outside for some fresh air, Anita mentally noted that a walk was just what she needed right now. She wondered what the Empress and Arabella were discussing. Since Anita was originally sure they'd want to talk with her, she was ready for the topic of marrying the prince to come up. But the Empress was looking so intently at Arabella, it seemed she was waiting for the older Miss Renati to show up, and Mom also acted like she was eagerly anticipating this conversation. Suddenly, some boy ran into the main character, and she barely kept him from falling. He apologized, and Anita wondered if he was visually impaired, given his trouble spotting obstacles. Although the boy thanked his rescuer, he still clung tightly to her hands. Anita was surprised that he wouldn't let go of her and just stood there silently, as if he wanted to say something. Then, he suddenly moved in the opposite direction, leaving Anita puzzled about who he was and why he was alone. Meanwhile, advisors approached Axion and reported that, according to a maid, the prince had left his chambers a while ago. Sir Rick was annoyed that the prince was late again and was showing blatant disrespect. The lamp of Ariadne, which can locate people connected by blood, had been with the Renati family for a long time. It was the Empress who helped them acquire this relic. Axion added that when the elder daughter appeared, Marquis Renati and his wife didn't report it for a month. One of the advisors noted that, by the way, Miss Arabella is at the Empress's reception today. But knowing Macrease's character, Miss Anita is probably here too. When he heard his beloved's name, the young master perked up and promised he'd be back soon. The advisors yelled after him that they had a meeting with the prince soon. Wandering around the inner imperial court, Axion finally found his fiancé. She was totally surprised to see Axion there and asked what he was doing. The young man said he had an appointment with the prince, and the girl confessed she was accompanying her sister to an audience with the Empress. He asked if his beloved had seen the prince by chance. Anita laughed and said, "Of course not." Suddenly, Axion noticed a mark on his fiancé's cheek and anxiously asked who dared to do it. The guy figured it was her parents and promised himself to endure until she could leave her crazy family. Anita returned to the palace and waited with her mother for Bella. The room filled with tension. She was already mentally complaining about why her sister was taking so long with the Empress. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and Arabella finally came out of the hall, joyfully shouting her younger sister's name. Their mother just gave a silent glance. Despite this, the Marquise bombarded her with questions about how everything went. Then she asked if the Empress had called for her, but her daughter confidently stated that no, they were ordered to go home. Almost leaving the palace, the Marquise mentioned she had forgotten to tell Her Majesty something. The maid replied that they needed to schedule another meeting, to which the Marquise angrily shouted that it was ridiculous. They were already at the palace. Why sign up again? Mentally, Anita noted that, of course, Mother couldn't just leave the situation as it was and walk away. The only question left is why the Marquise waited so long, given that the Empress had given her Ariadne's lamp. At that moment, for some reason, the main character remembered her father mentioning that an engagement could bring useful connections. The girl drew a mental parallel and realized that her parents were helped by people from the Archduchy. After all, just compare that someone helped them find Arabella, and they still want to break off the younger daughter's engagement. So let's get back to what's happening right now at the Imperial Palace with our characters. Marquise Renati was still shouting, with Bella trying to calm her down, repeating that the maid had explained that it couldn't be done today. The woman told Bella that she is the heiress of the Renati house, and she doesn't have to listen to or do what a maid says. On such a negative note, the Marquise left the Imperial Palace. Back in the carriage, Bella speculated that if Mother had returned to the Empress, she might have gotten angry. By evening, Anita was getting ready for bed when she heard a knock at the door. Turned out, it was Arabella, who asked to stay over for the night. Anita agreed, then asked her sister to sit down on the divan. She took out a small box of ointment that Hari had brought her and applied it to her cheek. The blonde girl asked if her sister had noticed everything from the start. Anita nodded and asked to confirm if it was the Empress who had hit her. Arabella said that Her Majesty is a good person. Probably the guest's words seemed rude to her. The blonde girl recalled telling the Empress how important Anita was to her and that her engagement must happen. For saying that, Her Majesty responded with a slap and asked if Arabella would insist on her point if they ordered to chop off her finger. Arabella told this story to Anita and declared that her sister's happiness was more important to her than any finger. Lying in bed, the main character reflected on how her sister had amazed her, having been a coward before, yet she dared to speak up to the Empress. She was glad that her sister finally calmed down and fell asleep, certain that no one should dare to harm another person, regardless of their title. The next day, Axion met again with Khalid, the sole heir to the empire. His Highness was asked why Mr. Rakit had left the day before. He replied that the prince wasn't there, and His Highness had said that he should have stayed and waited. Then the prince responded that he had heard that yesterday, Axion's fiancé had been at the Empress's reception. Khalid mentally noted that Anita Renati had been a thorn in his side since the academy, as Axion had struggled in such aristocratic circles. But for his beloved, he started making new connections and accepting various invitations. His Highness smirked and remarked that they hadn't thought Axion would share his friends with his fiancé. The prince asked what would happen if his beloved started talking to someone better than her fiancé. With a calm face, Axion said that wouldn't happen, and the prince asked why he was so sure. He slyly asked if Axion was planning to intervene. The young man said there was no need for him to do that, as he already stood out from the rest. Khalid asked, "Is that so?" Then Axion pulled out a precious stone and handed it to His Highness, who said they had always been grateful to the guy. Khalid added that now the boy could at least see the light on a bright sunny day. Breaking the awkward silence, the prince asked how the Archduchess was doing. The thing is, when a child with divine power was born into the Archduke's family, the Emperor's sanity got a bit cloudy. His Majesty concocted a plan to destroy the Archduke, and since then, Axion has hated his gift. Khalid admitted that his mom still feels guilty for tricking him into jumping in the lake. Axion responded with a smirk that he'd definitely pass that along. And Khalid added, it was all thanks to entrusting the matter to him. He pointed out that the future emperor won't forget this kind act. Meanwhile, the main heroine was sneaking through the dense forest by the lake, so no one would hear her talking to the spirit. She hoped he wasn't upset with her, since they hadn't spoken for a whole month. But as soon as her foot touched the familiar clearing, the spirit's voice joyfully shouted her name, and started babbling about how much he missed her, to which the girl replied that she had been busy and couldn't come earlier. Then, Anita asked if it was possible to affect sensitivity to divine power, to which the spirit replied that it would be difficult. He added that such people should probably avoid the sanctuary, although he wasn't sure, since it's just a place of healing. The girl noted that the spirit was talking strangely, and he retorted that she should be thankful he still remembers how to speak at all. He asked when the girl would come next, but she said she didn't know and advised him not to wait for her. The spirit called his friend cruel, then added that he knows she has a kind and warm heart, and promised to reveal his name someday. Stepping out of the forest onto the lakeside where aristocrats strolled, Anita noted to herself that she would be noticed, and rumors would start again about her walking alone by the lake. Suddenly, someone called out to Lady Renati. Turning around, she saw a stunningly beautiful girl with fiery red hair. Anita asked what the Count Sauvier's daughter needed from her. Rumor has it that Count Sauvier loved his second wife and stepdaughter even more than his own children. Anita recalled a tea party with Rachel Sauvier and her question about whether she considered Anita a friend. The red-haired girl had been influential in high society since birth. However, it was only in the presence of her dark-haired friend that she didn't pretend and showed her true self. The heroine asked that question because the books say that a true friend is someone who talks to you without any pretense. But for some reason, Rachel got mad and yelled that Anita needed to get rid of such nonsense in her head. Even after that, Anita couldn't understand why Rachel kept showing her displeasure. And now, she's looking at the dark-haired girl with the same dissatisfaction. Laughing, Rachel wondered aloud if the Renati family had stopped supporting their younger daughter, since she looked so plain. Suddenly, the redhead dramatically gasped as if she heard something intriguing from her companion. Then she grabbed Anita by the arm and warned her friends that she needed to talk privately with her buddy right away. She took the dark-haired girl aside and whispered that they should keep it up to show everyone how close they are. Rachel quietly told Anita that those girls were unbearably boring, and she wanted to get away from them. Moving away, Rachel finally took a deep breath and said that, as a thank you, she would buy the dark-haired girl some clothes. Anita said she's too busy right now as she has a meeting. The other woman was surprised, seeing that Anita had neither escorts nor a carriage. Rachel noted that they might never meet again, so she'd thank her right now by sharing some news. Anita learned that the Marquis of Oakland had found out about the arrival of the Renati family's first daughter. The girl remarked that it wasn't surprising, since she is the sister of the Renati family head. Rachel remembered that there's a ball coming up soon for the sacred ritual, and asked if they would meet there. Anita was puzzled, as it was rare to hear such words from a friend. Was she hinting or warning her about something? Now, let's follow our heroine to the Renati family palace. Upon entering, the butler immediately greeted her and mentioned that the Marquise was very curious about the whereabouts of the youngest daughter. Heading towards the staircase, Anita mentioned she had been at Lake Alkente. On the stairs, she bumped into Arabella, who joyfully shouted her name and asked where she had been. Bella added that she was getting worried, and Anita mentally replied that her sister better not know, as it would break her heart. The main character spent a lot of time visiting Arabella's foster family. Anita knew that the Marquise hadn't given them a dime, so she wanted to give them some money, especially since their youngest daughter was injured. On the day Bella was taken to the castle, the little girl ran up to say goodbye to her sister and called her by a different name. For that, the knight pushed the girl hard. But despite all this, the family still genuinely loves their foster daughter and cares about her affairs. Anita thought that she had never received so much love, and because of that, she felt even sorrier for these kind and sweet people. She briskly walked past her sister and remarked that there was no need for her to worry. Bella shouted that she didn't mean any harm. She just wanted to ask Anita something, but she wasn't home. Then the dark-haired girl stopped, showing with all her demeanor that she was listening attentively. Arabella timidly mentioned that the sacred ceremony was coming up soon, and it would be good to pick some accessories for her dress. Without waiting for her to continue, Anita agreed, and her sister was surprised at how she guessed it without even being asked. The dark-haired girl explained it was simple, as her sister had wanted to take her shopping in the trade district. The next day, Anita Renati's carriage arrived at the Archduchy. For the past 7 years, Anita and Axion have been having tea at the Archduchy 2 or 3 times a month. The young man greeted his beloved and happily announced that now she would be driven right up to the doors of Ricada. The girl mentally noted that she only had this privilege because she was going to be part of this family in the future. Suddenly, Anita said that Arabella was just fine and feeling great, to which the guy asked why he needed this information. At first, the girl was taken aback, then reminded her fiancé that the blonde girl had fainted here last time. She added that, of course, it wasn't contagious, probably to the fiancé's surprise. Then the girl apologized for not letting him know earlier, and Axion asked if she was okay. She froze, totally surprised by such an unexpected question, and wondered if she really looked so bad that he would think that. Anita smiled and assured him that she was perfectly fine, not sick or tired at all. Suddenly, there was a shout. Someone was urgently calling for Mr. Axion, and the young people turned around, and they saw Grace, the head maid, and the young master's assistant. Anita told Axion he could go, assuming the maid was probably there for her, but he said he didn't want to part so soon. Besides, he had another important question for his beloved. Axion asked if he could be her partner. The girl was surprised, wondering why he was asking now, since there were still 3 months left before she would leave her father's house. The answer had been decided long ago, and Anita confidently said that Axion could be her escort at all events. The guy was over the moon. After a while, Grace asked Miss Anita if she wanted any special gift since her birthday was coming up. Just as the girl barely opened her mouth to reply, Ella burst out of the Archduchess's chambers and headed towards Grace. Ella susurró algo a Grace, y ella dijo que tenía que ir urgentemente. Then she added that she just remembered that the Duchess Ricade asked her to say she couldn't make it to the tea party because of some business. For some reason, the maids' nervous behavior and their fuss seemed suspicious to the protagonist, and she wanted to check everything herself. Before the maids could recover, Miss Anita quickly ran to the Archduchess's chambers and flung the doors open. She saw the ill Duchess Ricade and apologized for her abruptness, but the woman kindly replied that it was all right. When she started coughing badly, Anita asked worriedly how long this had been going on and what the illness was. Axion's mother noted that she was glad to see a familiar face, and as for the illness, the doctors couldn't determine it. The girl suggested asking for help from the sanctuary or His Majesty. Right then, she realized the nonsense she'd blurted out, since they all dream of getting rid of the Archduchess. The Emperor sees her as a rival, and the temple folks would want to take guardianship of Axion because he possesses divine power. The Archduchess once again advised the girl not to worry, as she had already saved a woman once, so she could have died back then. She noted that she had lived a full and interesting life and had no regrets. At that moment, the girl realized that she had been loved, cared for, and cherished without even noticing. The main character confidently declared that she wouldn't just sit by and watch the Archduchess fade away. A smile lit up the woman's face again. The Archduchess took the girl's hand and remarked that she always knew Anita was very kind. Then she said she hoped Anita wouldn't tell Axion anything, but the girl replied that she couldn't promise that. On her way home, Anita mentally noted that the Archduchess's son had been handling documentation work for 3 years now. It seems the illness has been progressing for quite some time. Anita thought to herself that the Archduchess might have felt the girl was speaking impulsively. In reality, she was dead serious. She doesn't throw words to the wind and is confident in her intentions. Now, Anita knew exactly what to do. All the crucial information was in the Duchy's secret library. Axion must be visiting there often, so it would be impossible to hide his mother's severe illness from him. The girl wondered how she could find a way to save the Archduchess. But nothing in life ever came easy to Anita, so she had long come to terms with that. A couple of days later, Marchioness Renati was discussing with her husband that she felt the duchy wanted to distance itself from them. Her husband assured her everything was fine, as there were no reasons for concern. He reminded that when the Archduchess handed over the affairs to her son, there were similar concerns, but it led to acquiring the relic. The Marchioness insisted that this time it's different. There's a tense atmosphere in the air, even though usually all the aristocrats suck up to her. The Marquis reassured everyone that everything's fine, since only the wife of some baron caused dissatisfaction and suspicion. At one of the tea parties, the Baroness mentioned how lucky the Marquise was to have a daughter like Anita. The woman praised her intelligence and organization, saying she could have been a great person if she had attended an academy. The Marchioness complained that a negative aura had formed around the Renati family after a terrible reception at the Empress's. The man noted that his wife has become too impressionable because of the upcoming event. Suddenly, a maid entered the room and announced that Miss Anita had returned. The Marquis asked if his wife wanted to talk to their daughter, but the woman replied that it would only ruin her mood. Anita was always seen by the Marchioness as a child who stole everything that rightfully belonged to Arabella. Just one arrogant look was enough to drive her mad. She ordered the maid to remind Anita to behave and relay her parents' instruction to stay at home. The Marquise added that the cheeky girl had been wandering around too much lately. At that moment, Anita's carriage arrived at the square. The girl knew that finding a way to cure the Archduchess was no easy task. That's why she came here, to find someone who could help with that. 3 years ago, when her academy admission was unsuccessful, her parents isolated her from everyone. To protect herself somehow, Anita set up a trading post through another person. Although it's a small place, there's someone here she can trust. No sooner had Anita knocked on the door than Vanessa, the manager, appeared on the threshold and joyfully exclaimed at the sight of her mistress. She immediately bombarded the unexpected guest with questions, then suggested they talk inside the house. The main character wondered where the manager's escorts were, as she hadn't seen anyone on her way here. Vanessa replied that she had fired them because she needed the money for a deal. Anita asked if she was really worried that this place would go bankrupt because of her. The girl smirked and added that if that happened, it would be her own fault for hiring someone incompetent. Anita noted that the manager was really trying hard, and Vanessa said that it was natural since the lady had saved her from death. The redhead remarked how unusual it was for a commoner to become a manager, while Anita thought to herself that things weren't that simple. Back in the days when there was an active search for Arabella, and Anita's parents were making charitable donations for their reputation. Once, someone asked the aristocrats to stop and listen, and the main character turned around. That's how she first met Vanessa. The girl with fiery hair loudly claimed that the director was pocketing all the donated money. Anita figured the documents must have been fake. Otherwise, the embezzlement would have been obvious. She asked why the girl was so sure, who explained that she used to work in the Information Guild, where she saw all sorts of things. That's when the main character realized this fearless girl could be a real asset to their trade spot. Let's leave the memories behind and move to the present, where Vanessa asked the mistress why she came. Anita apologized for not visiting often, saying she needed to make an inquiry in Croche. Vanessa was so surprised and shocked that she even spilled some tea. She noted that although this Information Guild has been around for 15 years, it's all kept hush-hush, nothing is known about it. Anita said that's no problem, no need to worry, as she knows the head of Croche. Now our narrative takes us to the Duchy of Viceros. Right by the Duke's chamber doors stood his personal assistant, Need Roheim. He finally decided to step in. Duke Roderick Viceros asked him if something urgent had happened, seeing as the assistant came so abruptly. Then the Lord spotted an unfamiliar pouch in Need's hands. Without any further ado, he knew it was meant for him. From the pouch, he pulled out a bottle, one he recognized from the past. The Duke instantly boiled with anger and demanded to know who dared.